I thought I'd show you all how I make a lid and hinge section for each of the Loki boxes. So there's two parts, there's the lid and the back panel, and then all of the hinge sections that connect the two bits together. So we're going to start with the lid. That comes in 3 separate parts. We need to die this piece. On the back panel, this piece is already dyed because it gets done as a whole sheet, and then those two bits get glued together. But because the serpents are cut from this section, this needs to be pulled out and this bit needs to be dyed separately. So I've got this Blackfriars dark oak wood dye. Normally I do this with some vinyl gloves because it stains your fingers nice, but we've got a fresh clean cloth and I'm just doing the one. So we give this a quick rub over with the dark oak, going careful not to get too much on the mat here. Give it a nice stain, make sure it's consistent all the way across. Because it's a nice clean cloth, it's going to need a bit of soaking to get that colour to spread nicely. You can see as I go over all these lumps and bumps it tends to snag the cloth, so it's a little bit of an awkward job, but this was the best way I could think about actually getting these two parts to work together. So come all the way around the other side. You can see I've got a little bit more on the cutting mat than I would normally like. Hopefully that's not going to stain any of the other work pieces. What I'll do is I'll switch this over. What I like about this wood dye is it dries quite quickly, so by the time we're ready for this piece again it'll be finished and good to go. You can see I use a clean sided cloth. Give that a bit of a wipe. Right, so that needs to be glued onto this piece, and you can see I've left the gaps where the serpent goes on the top of the box. This helps me glue in the right places, but it also makes this cutting a lot faster. I'm just going to run the glue, and I use this Evo stick wood glue with resin, so this grabs in about 30 seconds and then glues solid over the next 24 hours. And I just run this around the serpent pattern to give some good stick under there. Come around this other side, swoosh that round, and then I come all the way around where that top layer is going to rest. Around the outside of the box. And I fill in this gap quite loosely to give everything a good stick. Now you might be able to see some marks around the edge of this panel. There's 1, 2, 3 to line up with the 1, 2, 3 on the lid there. But I've realised recently that what I need to do is put some actual proper alignment marks, and these are the spaces where I need to put a larger dob of glue, because they're going to hold the hinges when that all gets put together in a minute. So I put all of those pieces in there with some good splodge of glue, and I bring this lid back in and I just line that up on that pattern, so this pattern fits perfectly into the rectangle on the lid there, and I just give it a little squash round, just a little bit of a spread, and that sticks that down quite well, starts to hold quite flat. Then bring the serpent into the middle, stick that down as well, and give that a little good squash round. It just spreads all the glue out underneath it. So now I've got these 3 gaps along here, and that's what all these little bits of detail are for. In fact, what I need to do is finish this. There's a latch that goes on the front here that gets locked into place with those pieces, so I need to assemble this one first. You can see these pieces are black on one side and white on the other. So the first thing we do is then give this a little smush around like that. So spread that in glue. There's a lot of glue there, so then I'll take the other black piece and I'll just rub the two together, which gives a good coverage on both sides, and I can use that to sandwich this third white piece into the middle, and that gives me the 3 layers that I need for this catch. Square it up on the surface there. Okay, so then this catch gets caught between these 2 pieces here. So I've got all of these little hooks for that. These are what's going to hold this in place. There is a little mark on the top surface because the laser cutter cuts with a V shape. So when I'm assembling these things, instead of trying to wedge it back in with the V, it's easier to flip it over and let the V work with it. So these 2 pieces just hook into the side there. Make sure they're the right way up. And then they rest, make sure definitely you got the right pieces, yeah. They rest into this gap here, and it's a nice snug fit. You can see this is where I applied the glue a bit heavier on the previous operation. So when that's rested in place, I bring this useful tools, little piece of sticks, I bring that down under there. That supports this panel now. And I grab a hammer and just tap that into place, down firmly on the glue there. So you can see that bracket now sits nicely on the front, pivots slightly. Going to turn this round and do the other 3 pieces. So on the back we've got one-sided hinges, so this allows the lid to go on and off. So these all go on the left hand side, and I just push that in and right up to the top there. 1, 2, 3, and a corresponding blank piece for the other side. This just makes it look like it's a full complete hinge like that one was. In the first iteration of the box, these were also complete hinges on the back. Oh, sorry, that's proved to be a little bit stiffer than. And the first iteration of the lid, these were also complete hinges, but you couldn't remove the lid. So then, when you're working on the box and you accidentally lean on the lid, then the whole thing could snap off. So I put these one-sided hinges on as a definite improvement. So again, we put that stick under there, and tap the whole thing down into place. You can see a little bit of glue squodged out there, which is a good sign. It means it's stuck in place well. Slide that down, do the next one. 1, 2, 3. Oh, need to line that one a little bit better. That's the lid panel initially done. What we'll do is we'll bring it over here, support that end a little bit more, and we'll squash it flat while we carry on with the back panel. So the back panel again is made up of 2 sections that need to be glued together, but it's also got the mating half of the hinges. So again, each of these hinges has a black side and a white side, and there are 3 layers, so the middle piece is clean on both sides. So it's exactly the same as before. Just gonna glue this piece with a generous amount of glue, smush it over there, and then stick these 2 pieces together. And try and rest it down on the mat and square it up. But obviously this is going to leave a little glue mark on the mat. So just realising in a video, you know, doing 3 of these is relatively boring. But what I'd normally do is take a whole pot with me over to the television in an evening and sit there and watch whatever shows I'm watching. Just doing one after another, whiling away the hours, getting a whole pot done as quickly as possible, so that when I come to do the next part on the next day, they're all good to go again. That's 3 of those all glued and ready to be used. As I said, this glue grabs in about 30 seconds, so it's actually really useful for these kind of things. So on this panel, I don't know if you can see it again, I've marked out these areas where the hinges are going to sit. Now normally I glue these 2 parts together and then leave them in a box. So with this one, instead of putting more glue in this section, I want to make sure there's no glue in this section, so that when I come to do this at a later date, then the 2 sit nice and flat. Tonight that's much less of an issue. So I'm just going to spread glue all the way along here, make sure I get this bottom edge nice and thorough, all the way around the sides, like I said, all the way over this back piece. There's a certain amount of glue that can be smeared around by pushing the 2 halves together, but we still want to make sure we've got good coverage over everything. And then this time I'm going to make sure I've got extra coverage in these 3 parts for when I glue them together. So I'm going to bring this one in and squash it down. You can see this brown panel is actually a little bit bowed, so I wouldn't be surprised if that tries to pop up on me. Normally I'd put it under the weight and leave it for a while. But there's another trick I can do tonight, because I'm going to go straight in with these rivets. So each panel has 4 rivets, 2 on each side. So I'll bring those in on that side and screw this down in place. So these 4 rivets are mostly decorative, as you can see, because the back panel gets glued together. I can do those up nice and tight, and it holds everything in place. I mentioned in one of my previous updates that these are known as Chicago screws. I've actually got a better screwdriver for this. And I use them in the Antikythera tablets because this side is nice and flat, and you can glue it into place, and you've got this 4mm hole that you can then pivot around things. It's quite good for mechanisms that you want to slide against each other or move in relation to each other. Like I say, in this box it's largely decorative. And they can be a bit fiddly to get into place. I have a feeling they're pressed so that you actually end up with quite a few where the screw threads don't work. So usually a big pile of stuff gets thrown away when I'm doing a box full of these. A little bit of glue on there, I don't know where that came from, but you can see how you can sort of rub it off and rub it clean. So now I've got my 3 sections. I'm just going to apply a little bit more glue to the edges of this one, just to make sure. Belt and braces, you know, you want it to, all the weight of the lid is going to be hanging off these hinges, so you want to make sure that it's glued in tight. You can see a little bit of glue squashes out the edges. Again, a good sign that it's got a firm connection and a firm grip all the way around. 1, 2, 3. So normally you'd leave that for about 10 minutes so that you can get the glue to dry before you connect the lid hinge. I think actually what we'll do now is just put some clamps on it just to kind of hold it in place. So that would be the back panel of the box. I've got this heavy 12 kilo weight that I use to squash everything flat. Don't make any pretense of doing exercise with it, but it's very handy. As you can see, these again, a little bit more glue just squashed out from under that weight, that's fine. So these are square section pegs that are about to go in a round hole. So I made them fairly loose, but they'll just round off as it gets squashed into these holes. And that keeps it with just a little bit of friction for turning. So we work it in the hole like that, and there is the lid hinge. Okay. So that's one box done. I'm not sure why these are slightly different colour. I guess it's a different bottle of dye, but I'll find a pair that match better when that actually goes into a box. And that's it. Now all I have to do is repeat that another 300 times and you'll all have a box. Thanks for watching. See you soon.